Welcome back to Rip to Shreds. This week, we're going to rip Cobweb from 2023 to shreds. It is directed by Samuel Bodin. It's a horror movie that competed with Oppenheimer and Barbie for some love in the box office. And as a lot of us know, it didn't get much love because it had a lot of competition to fight against.
Womp womp.
Womp womp. Well, but to get a basis about what Cobweb's about, I'm going to read the IMDb summary. Cobweb is about an 8-year-old boy tries to investigate the mysterious knocking sounds that are coming from inside the walls of his house, unveiling a dark secret that his sinister parents have kept hidden from him. Whoa.
Boom,
So,
boom, boom.
boom, boom, boom. We have a pretty dark, to me, children's fairy tale, paranormal story. It is very psychological from the kid's point of view, which, before we get into all of the fun little story aspects of it, we'd like to talk about trivia of the story.
Yes,
So
sir.
there's not much trivia about the film, but I will lead off with this one because I found a trivia fact off of a Letterboxd. So reading through all the little reviews of Letterboxd, I have followed director Joe Lynch, and he gave me a little bit of trivia. He wrote, "It's interesting to watch a film that you initially pitched on. You have such a particular vision for what the film would be, especially with a great script like this. And when someone else gets to tell it, it's curious to see how it compares to your own." So it's a cool little bit of trivia there that Joe Lynch tried to pitch for this movie. He's from Mayhem fame and Chillerama, and directed the Salma Hayek-led movie Everly. So he kind of has like that almost different kinetic kind of style that is way different than Cobweb, but would be an interesting take on the film from the version that Samuel Bodin did.
So was this
Um,
like a script that was just out there and he
yeah,
tried
it
to
was a script
pitch?
that was like one of the top, like I think it was like on 2018's top like blacklist, one of those scripts that people like but just hasn't been made yet.
Oh, okay.
And so it was
Interesting.
cool to just read, since I follow him on at Letterbox, to read that little bit snippet of information. Um,
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, Cobweb was made on a $13 million budget, and it only made $10 million though.
well,
So that's
if
a
competition with Barbie and Oppenheimer.
yeah. So that's at least a $5 million loss. But as we know, well, $3 million. Sorry. As we know, advertising is usually like just puts that up even more.
Yeah,
This movie, I don't think was advertised all that much. I remember seeing a little bit of advertisement for it, but it was pretty easy to ignore because anytime I do see like any sort of ad for a horror movie and it catches my attention in the slightest, I try to kind of ignore the advertising for it so that way I can go into it more blind. But I do recall seeing some stuff about it. But yeah, so it's safe to assume that it probably lost like 5 million plus. Um,
yeah,
so RIP Womp Womp. The thing that I found very interesting is we were also trying to look at trivia on IMDb. Seth Rogen produced this movie. I missed that in the credits. It's his first
yeah.
horror movie he produced. Um, so that's kind of interesting, like especially like this movie, like I would say it's a decent movie. It's just not like anything crazy. And my
Yeah.
light just died. Let me turn that back on. But it's still like it has those vibes of a horror movie from like the early 2000s, I'd say, where it's
Definitely.
like, oh, look at this little hidden gem that you never heard about, and it's not great, but it's decent. It
Yeah.
feels like one of those types of movies, and so it's kind of
Yeah.
funny just to have all these kind of like bigger names attached to it, and it's like, I don't know, it's just kind of interesting.
Well, when the movie came out, The Boys was probably in its infancy, so Homelander, I forget his name.
I mean, it
I'm
came
not.
out only 2 years ago, which like I would say The
Yeah,
Boys
but
was pretty popular at the time.
one of the interesting trivia facts is that it was filmed in 2020 and shelved for 3 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I believe
So
that.
what's
Well,
his name? Anthony Starr.
yeah. So that
Anthony
kind of
Starr.
makes
Yeah.
sense that like as far as him not being a focal point of the advertisement, because at the time when it was filmed, like that wasn't the plan. But I'm surprised they didn't shift to like be like, look who's in it. It's Homelander. You know.
It's Homelander. Yeah.
Because I just remember like the little bit of advertisement that I did see definitely did not focus on him at all.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I don't remember where like exactly that I like read about this film. I don't know if it was like, top 2000 like 23 horror films or something like that, or it must have been something that, was recommended to me somehow that, along the lines that I forget because I talk to everybody about film. But it was something that, was on my list to watch for a while and I just never got to it. And then we were looking at, a Rip to Shreds video to do this week and, we cycled through a couple of them, and then we landed on Cobweb, which I'm happy that I got to see it because it probably would have been one of those films that after a few more years, 5 years later, I'd be like, hey, what was that one film I want to watch? Like, oh yeah, Cobweb. I'm like, oh,
hmm
I'll check it out now.
no, yeah,
And then like
exactly.
2030 by then.
It's been on like the back burner ever since it did come out for me.
Yeah,
But like once again, it came out the same weekend as Barbie and Oppenheimer, which I saw both of those movies, but I didn't have time to see anything else. I wanted to see it, I just never got around to it.
fun
Um,
fact: I haven't seen either of those films, and I've seen this one first.
Both of them, I would say, are extremely overrated.
Yeah,
Um, so,
I can definitely see that.
but yeah, another little fun trivia fact is Luke Busey's first feature film, and he is the son of the legend Gary Busey. Gary Busey is old. Luke Busey is like 8. So, he's just old and getting it in and making kids still. So good for him.
Yeah, he's joined the ranks of Al Pacino, having kids in their old age.
Yeah, but then the thing about Mr. Luke Busey, I would say his character was probably a little bit of a down point of the movie for me.
Yeah,
Um, because so you got this movie that we can get into the plot a little bit. You got the kid that is just kind of like a little bit of a social outcast. But it's really funny
hmm
because, like, right from the beginning, they just establish Luke's character. I don't remember the character's actual name. I don't remember any of the characters'
Brian,
names. Brian. So, what's the main kid's name?
Peter,
Peter. So Peter, he's a little sad. He's a little sad kid for like
little mopey.
little mopey, but he doesn't. They never establish anything as far as like, oh, he's like literally sad. No, he's just mopey.
Yeah.
But just
Well, he's a little lonely
he
because
is
he's an only
lonely.
child.
Correct. Yeah. But then just like straight from the beginning, Brian is just like, I'm gonna beat the shit out of you. Like
Yeah,
he just hates on him for no reason. And that's just the
his famous
thing.
quote: "Wait till recess.
Yeah, wait till recess.
Wait till
Like
recess."
it is so like I would say that is the lowest point of writing for the entire film because it just feels so forced and nonsensical. There's no sort of establishment as to why he doesn't like him. He doesn't even say anything like as far as you're a weirdo or anything like that. No, he's just straight to violence. He's like, I'm gonna beat your ass. Like,
Yeah.
and then like
It was almost like typical like 80s bully style like writing. It's like I'm gonna throw stuff at the nerd
the
and I'm
o-
gonna bully him and push him.
the only thing that was missing for it being like a 80s perfect 80s bully is he didn't like pull out a switchblade. Like,
Yeah.
that would
Have
have just been the
Letterman's
cherry
jacket.
on top. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But yeah, so then Peter is dealing with this at school. He's a little bit of a loner, and when he goes home, his parents love him, but they're kind of weirdos, you know? Like the vibe you get from them is like super strict, like religious parents, you know. They kind of establish,
Overprotective.
yeah, they establish early on no trick or treating. Like, so it's like, oh, okay. So you just kind of almost assume there's like a religious aspect to it, simply because no trick or treating. And then eventually it comes out, they like tell him that, like, oh, we don't want you to go trick or treating because a long time ago, like before you were born, this one girl went trick or treating and then she disappeared. Nobody knows what happened to her. And so we don't want that to happen to you. So they're just very overprotective. But then he starts hearing the knocking in his wall and weird noises. And then his parents are once again like, they're just kind of dicks the whole like movie.
Yeah.
So they're like, you don't hear anything. Shut up. You don't hear anything. Like, you just have an overactive imagination. And then his teacher gets concerns at school and is like, is Peter okay? And then like their response to the teacher is just they just establish that they're weirdos and it seems like there's some form of abuse going on, but you don't really know.
Yeah.
But it's just like Peter has an overactive imagination, and then just yell at him because you're not hearing anything, you crazy little boy. And then the knocks turn into a voice, and that voice starts talking some jazz about just all sorts of stuff of like, your parents are lying to you, like they're evil, and like, you know, you start to kind of believe it because it's like, yeah, evidence so far they're dickheads.
Like, your parents are not who that you think they are.
Exactly. And then like literally like, and then like Peter does some
But
stuff.
the voice is like a calm, like nice, like little
it's
girl
true.
voice.
It's like,
So
oh, Peter,
I should,
you know. It's true.
explain that because it's something that, maybe a little boy in his eyes, would believe because it's like this nice, calm little girl explaining Peter.
I mean, yeah, like literally, like pretty much from the get go, my vibe was like, oh yeah, this is like a little girl that, you know, she's saying stuff. And full spoilers, by the way, if if you're interested in this movie, it does have some twists and turns. So if you're interested at all, definitely watch it. Going on.
Spoiler from here on.
Yeah, exactly. We already spoiled some stuff, but that stuff didn't matter. Now we're getting to real stuff. You know, she's saying stuff of like, they're murderers, you know. There's a freaking skeleton buried in the backyard, and then he goes and digs it up, and oh, there's a skeleton. Oh my God, she's right. And you kind of believe it, and you know, it has that vibe of like, okay, so this is like they murdered this little girl and she is like a ghost in the walls. That's kind of like the assumption. Oh yeah, she says, I'm your sister. And
then to like help like kind of like show that she's like a good spirit or good thing, she tells Peter, you need to protect yourself.
Yeah,
you're bullied.
exactly.
You need to show him that you're not scared. Show him you're tough.
And they did their own little like you know, whatever you want to call it, like a Chekhov's gun, except it was Chekhov's cinnamon rat poison. Because you know, he's hearing tapping, so his dad's like, that's just, you're hearing rats, let's take care of that, look, this is rat poison and blah blah blah. And then he's like sad that Peter's like, oh, I don't want to kill rats. He's like, oh, we have to make sacrifices, Peter, and all that kind of shit. And then several stuff happens where dad and mom are just acting super sus, where it's like very much painting the picture that dad and mom are bad. Peter acts out in some sort of way, gets in trouble with school, um, and then and then the voice tells him like, he gets expelled because the voice is like, you gotta stick up for yourself. That bully's a little bitch, so throw him down the stairs. And that's exactly what Peter does. And then you get this great shot of this child with his leg like bent backwards and stuff.
That was wild.
It was like, yo, and he's just screaming. And then next thing you know, you're expelled, and then dad is like, you're grounded, and then the mom's like, yeah, go to your room, and then Mr. Homelander's like, no, you're going to the basement. It's like, what basement? And then he moves the fridge, and they have a door with a creepy dark hallway, and it's like, what the hell? They have like a secret dungeon, and they put him in the dungeon, and he's chained up, and it's like, yo, they are abusive. This is like some kind of crazy like evil parent movie.
And then while he's down there, he's sitting on like a pallet with like a blanket on top, and then he looks and sees that there's like a grate.
Yeah. And
into like a bigger hole. And it's like, what the fuck? What's going on here?
Yup.
And you're like, what is going on? Are these parents fucking crazy or something like that? Are they fucking killing their children or kidnapping kids or what's going on?
Exactly. So like they pretty much established that like, like that's what's going on. And so then they let him out. He's trying to be a good boy and stuff, and then there's stuff with the dad like pretty much like laying it out that he's like gonna kill Peter is what you think is going on. Because he's being a bad boy, and then he like there's this whole thing.
Help me do something tomorrow.
Yeah, you're gonna help me do something tomorrow, and it's like, oh god.
Meet me outside.
They go outside to they have like a little pumpkin patch, and then he has like this analogy that he's explaining to him of like there's blight and a rot that's infecting all the pumpkins. He's like, so we have to take the bad pumpkins and get rid of them so they don't ruin the next season's batch, you know? And and you've already established this thing with him having an older sister that you're like, okay, they killed the older sister and she's like the ghost in the wall or whatever. And and then he like has this analogy of like, we have to sacrifice this batch so that way the next batch can like thrive and stuff. And so it's like, he's like saying this to him with like a very stern, it's like, oh god, they're gonna kill Peter so they can just like try again and make another kid.
And then he's like, dig a hole.
And then they just like actually put the pumpkins in there and stuff, and it's like,
what the hell?
Yeah, so just don't be so sus, Dad. But so then the big Chekhov cinnamon rat poison. They're eating dinner later, and then Homelander.
It's not just normal dinner. It's fucking like porridge or
it's
oatmeal.
Really
it's like
gross porridge.
It's like this whole family's like malnourished. They're not eating fucking like a normal meal, and you know, throughout the whole movie, the house looks like it's kind of like old and kind of poor condition. The outside, there's like, it's not painted. It looks a lot run down, and you're like, what is going on?
Yeah, and then and then Antony Starr's like, this porridge tastes different. Did you do something different to it? No, I wasn't doing different. Hey, Peter, stop playing with your food and eat it. Don't know why he's not eating it. Whatever. And like both the parents eat a whole bunch. And then he's like, this tastes like cinnamon. And he's like, Peter. And then Peter's like, you hurt my sister. And then Antony Starr go bye-bye, pukes up a bunch of black goo and drops fucking dead.
And goodbye, Homelander.
And then the mom, who is actually, here's another little fun trivia fact, she's the like goth chick from Mean Girls. It's that actress. But like so she grabs a knife to go after Peter, which is like kind of wild. But you know, they're evil at this point. You're like, fuck them up. You know, mom's evil too. She's running after Peter. Peter gets away, pushes her down the stairs. She stabs herself with the freaking knife. And then she's like, you can't let her out. And it's like,
Don't let her out.
what are you talking about? And it's like, she's like, no, like whatever you do, don't let her out, Peter. Like, it's like, she, her last words sound like she's actually like concerned for Peter. So you're like, wait, what? Because there was a thing of like her being like, I'm in the walls, I'm behind the clock. You gotta murder your parents and like let me out because they're mean, they're bad people. So then he gets this pair of keys, he moves the clock, there's a little door, he opens it, and then out comes his sister.
But before that happens, when he's about to open the door, we get a whole tonal change to the whole film. We see little fuck Brian show up with his cousins.
Yeah.
And they fucking have their Halloween mask.
Because it's Halloween night, of course.
Yeah. This part to me was like the coolest part of the whole movie.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Them wearing the Halloween mask and they're about to fucking infiltrate the house.
So, yeah, they're like, is this the house, Brian? Little cuz, we're gonna go mess up the kid that pushed you down the stairs. But then it cuts back to him actually
opening up the door.
And then you see some spooky, like, you see, like, glowing eyes and then a big smile. And then she's starting to come out. And he freaks Peter out. So he's like,
runs underneath
yo,
his bed.
fuck this. Like, runs away. Because now he's like, wait, what's going on? And, yeah, so then he hides. And so then sister's out. And then Brian and his cousins break in. And then I realized this movie is not a PG-13 horror movie. It is in fact an R-rated horror movie, which I had forgotten about. Simply because there was nothing. There wasn't like swearing. There wasn't gore. It was keeping, a pretty dark tone. It was pretty good. And then shit pops off.
And if you guys didn't notice, it popped off so bad in Brendan's head that his internet went out and we had to restart.
So bad that it just crashed all my shit, and here we are back. So they enter the house because the door's like kind of open and stuff, and it showed like as they were like approaching and stuff that she was like taking the parents' bodies away, and I was like, what's going on here? And then they're just like, oh, we're gonna trash this house. And so it's like, how many kids is it? It's so it's the kid, but then it's like three is three teenagers. So they just start trashing the house and everything, and then they find like blood, and then even Brian slips in blood, finds the mom's body, and then just these teenagers start getting just obliterated by the sister, who is like some kind of creepy crawly monster. Like, so she does look human, but she's like walking on all fours. She can crawl on the ceiling. She has super long hair.
She's covered with her hair is covered in spiders.
And
which she kind of has like some kind of like spider movement to her as well.
No, yeah, exactly. And there's like one shot, like it's kind of weird. Like she doesn't have like a thing where it's like frame rate skipping, but she does in one shot. And then I just thought that was really weird. It was like mainly like her shadow, like it like kind of like you saw her do it a little bit, and then it was like continued with the shadow. And I was like, okay, like it wasn't doing that the whole time, and that was the only moment it did that, and that was just weird. And yeah, no, like, so she grabs a teenager, pulls him under the piano, and then just like a bucket of blood just squirts out. And then what happened to the two other ones? So then Brian like slips in the blood, and then the other one is like being like drugged behind a door, and then is like being like thrown up and down and stuff. And I don't
He's
think
like, Brian, help me, help me,
Brian,
Brian.
but Brian's a little crippled ass bitch. So like, what's he
Yeah.
gonna do? He's also like 10. So
And then the dude gets like slammed up and down from the ceiling all the way down to the floor while he's holding on to the wall. And finally, his grip breaks and he gets sucked into the hallway, and we never see him again.
Yep. And then
Yeah.
the
The last one,
he was kind of like messing with Brian a little bit because he found Brian hiding
yeah,
under the bed, but then he heard all the commotions. So
Peter.
then Peter, that's right, not Brian,
Yeah.
found Peter, the main character, under the bed. But then he like just kind of leaves him there because he hears all the commotion, and then you see Peter's perspective of him getting thrown like to the wall, and then he like walks, like stumbles back and thrown back, stumbles back. It was like it did it so many times that I was like, okay, kind of goofy looking. But then the last time he stumbles back and then stumbles back into frame, and he has no head, and it's like, oh shit. So yeah, it just gets like pretty freaking gory. And you do see the sister does pounce on Brian,
Yeah.
but you don't really see what happens. And then she's like talking to Peter,
She gets
and
upset with Peter that, she saw that, he had like the perfect life, that he was like, comforted by the parents, had like the warm bed while she was stuck in the walls.
Yeah. And like this point she's not talking very nice. And she just like lays it out that like I manipulated you. I actually like hate you low key. And
we're gonna kill you.
Yeah, and so like the thing that's interesting is, so what she lays out is that she was born a monster, so she's the one that killed the little girl that was trick-or-treating, and her parents then locked her away and just like locked her in the walls / the basement, and that's where she got
like they hid the body for her.
Yeah, and then she lived amongst the cobwebs and stuff. So the parents have just been keeping this secret child monster thing in their walls, which like I wish that got flushed out a little bit more rather than us just learning it there, because it's like, so wait, are the parents like they've been like feeding her, or like how is she just like chilling in the walls this whole time, and they're okay with that? Like, is there, and she obviously is like supernatural. She's like crawling on walls and doing all this crazy shit. So it's she's like
strong.
Yeah.
She's able to like throw people.
So it's not that she's just like a crazy person. There's something supernatural about her. She's like a monster. Yeah. You do get like, you see some glimpses of her face where her eyes are like a little bit bigger, but then her mouth is like very eccentric, and that when you do
almost
get
like Cheshire Cat style.
Yeah, exactly. And then when you do get like a good shot of her face,
she just looks like a little girl.
Well, when you see like a good shot with like the actual like the mouth and everything, it does not look good in my opinion. No. Like when it's just purely glimpses and you can see that it's a really big mouth for like a split second, it's like not bad. But then when you do like full on see, it's like, oh god.
That was the thing that was interesting. Like, you'd see like little glimpses and she just looked like a normal little girl, but maybe a little dirtier and a little more rough looking. But then when you got the quick glance, good look of her, it was like CGI'd. Like everything was accentuated and bigger, and it's like, that doesn't look good. Yeah. It's almost like, please, you should have saved that and left that for our imagination.
Like, I feel like what she like ultimately looked like was I don't know what any of it's called, but I've seen different things with like a bunch of like Japanese animes where like the monsters have like really accentuated mouths and stuff, and she kind of just looks like a Oni demon thing, but like just like stupid and not cool looking.
It's like almost like I've in my head her face and everything was scarier than what we saw, and the way her hair just covered her face the whole time. I'm like, I'm glad that we don't get to see it, but then we do, and it's like, oh my
Yeah,
god, big
exactly.
letdown. It's like, come on.
Yeah, they should have just stuck with that.
Yeah,
But yeah, no, definitely like kind of had some vibes of like Japanese horror vibes, honestly. With
hmm
like the long hair, creepy girl in like kind of like a nightgown or something. I don't. She wasn't wearing a
yeah.
nightgown, but you know, like pajamas or something.
It was kind of like nightgown dressy.
Yeah, just creepy little girl is the vibe. But like also there was some shots where she looks like a little girl, but then there's some shots where she looks like an adult.
Yeah.
Which like would make sense if she's an adult or at least like a teenager because she was the older sister and this
hmm
happened before Brian was born. Peter was
Yeah.
born. Um, and yeah, so like it's kind of confusing as far as like the timeline of this whole thing, but not like that really matters.
hmm
But I think yeah, so when he's hiding under the bed, she like puts that down to like a jack-o'-lantern pumpkin and it was Brian's head, right? That was in that.
I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah, it had to be. It just like you couldn't really tell who it was.
Well,
Like
yeah, it was
it
CGI'd.
it could have been Anthony Starr's head for all I know, but
Yeah.
I think it was Brian though because you didn't really see what happened to Brian. So yeah, so she murdered Brian, murdered everybody. But then his like teacher who just like thinks he's in an abusive household comes to save the day. They fight her. He grabs her hair. And then they're like able to like lock her away back in like the basement like cage that's in the ground. Um,
Mm.
and then that's when it's a very shitty ending in my opinion of her like giving a little monologue of like pretty much being like you'll always be
Anytime you do
paranoid.
something,
I'll always be with you. You'll always be thinking about me in the walls and stuff like that.
every
Which
knock,
like
every scratch.
I'm not mad at that dialogue, but it's like she says that it goes through like a little montage of him, like, I guess in the future at like the teacher's house or something like that. Just
Yeah.
like, and him like seeing things and being spooked out. And then she's like behind him. And then all of a sudden credits. It's like, whoa, what? Like, that's the
Yeah.
ending. So it really felt like it was just like, and no more budget. Like, just nothing like so that was definitely a letdown at the very end.
Yeah.
Even though like I wasn't even mad at like the monologue, it was just that's it. um Super abrupt, not a fan of that. um
Yeah.
but yeah, so she definitely like has some. The thing that's interesting is so her she has like the looks on her face remind me of certain like Japanese anime demon looks, and then like the vibe of this whole thing of his sister being a monster and stuff like that literally kind of gave me the and reminded me of the anime that's actually called Monster. I don't know if you've ever heard of it or seen
Yeah.
it. I never finished it. I need to finish it. But it was like something with this doctor, surgeon that saves a kid, and that kid is like some kind of like monster. It's almost like a little bit of a Michael Myers thing where the kid is like evil itself or something. And
Yeah.
like and there's this like little like bedtime story about a monster growing inside, and it has like a children's like storybook thing, and like every episode ends with like that children's storybook. And so like I don't know if it like officially gets supernatural at the end of that show because I never finished it. But either way, it's like so this surgeon saves this kid, and then the kid like grows up and just is like this like serial killer. But then like even
Interesting.
like after he saves the kid and the kid's in like recovery, he gets framed for the murder of like other doctors and like the board members out of the hospital because the kid, as a kid, went and murdered them, and then he got framed for it. So he's like on the run and like searching for this kid that he saved the life of to then kill him. So it has these vibes of like and there's a whole like plot of like he's a twin and has a sister and stuff. So it has this thing of like he was born a monster, type thing. So just that like kind of idea, just it reminded me of that a little bit.
Yeah, the girl just reminded me of like The Ring, Samara.
Yeah.
Feel.
Yeah. Just a
kind of just like that
monster
horror,
version.
creepy, long hair. Yeah, and it felt like that. That early 2000s like kind of horror. That's where like this kind of like took a lot of inspiration from, and it's just one of those movies that where the some of the parts don't fit the whole of what the movie is. There's a lot of good parts in the movie. It's just that when it comes together, the movie's not as good as what some of the things in the movie is. Some of the parts in the movie, like I said, like my favorite part of the movie is when asshole Brian and all of his cousins show up in the van and they're standing in front of the house with like their weapons, and they pull down their Halloween masks, and it's just really dope shot, really dope idea. I'm like, oh, this is a cool tonal change. I'm like, oh, we're gonna see some ass kicking. That's a cool part. The whole idea of being all from like the child's point of view, and we're seeing like these parents as kind of evil, but yet then out of nowhere they're like nice and caring, and we're seeing like both the perspectives of like, oh, my parents were mean to me because I did something stupid, now they're evil, but then oh, my parents are being nice and caring for me, and treat me well, and it's like, okay, this is from a child's point of view, that's really cool. But then like the whole like reveal of the monster, I'm not saying the reveal of the monster of her coming out, because that was cool too. The whole of when we see the actual monster's face, some of the like just like little things, it felt like it dragged a bit. It felt like they try to manipulate us as the audience to feel one way and try to like lead us down this road of like the parents are evil the whole time, and it's like you should let us as an audience figure that out ourselves.
It was too heavy
and not like try to like push us to that. Yeah, very heavy handed. It's like we shouldn't be forced to feel that. We should experience that with the child.
Yeah, exactly.
So, there was multiple cool things about the movie.
One thing that's like, it is kind of interesting to think about. So like the little backstory is the fact that they had this older daughter that was a monster and killed another little girl. So then when Peter goes and pushes his bully down the stairs and commits an act of violence against another child, that's why the dad takes the drastic measure of like, you're grounded and getting chained up in the basement because you're now showing me the pattern of my previous child who was a monster. So now I'm afraid that you're a monster too. So we're going to take this drastic measure and then like let it play out a little bit. And then they kind of evaluate it and are like, okay, I think he's like, we can actually teach him instead of locking him up in the walls. So you kind of at least see that pattern there without recognizing it at the moment in the film. But if you look back on it, it's there. So it's like, that's kind of cool.
Like you'd probably tell that they are like normal parents with the first child. And the reason why they don't want to celebrate Halloween anymore is because of what happened on Halloween when, their daughter, killed the little girl. And it makes you think, the first thing they get a knock on the door, and you hear the mom like, "Go away, you little shits," or something like that.
Yeah,
I can't remember exactly what the line was, but it was a pretty funny line, and I just laughed, had an audible laugh.
Yeah.
And then Antony Starr is like, "Did you make sure the porch light was off?" She's like, "Yep, it's off." So it shows you there that they don't like Halloween because of that reason.
Yeah, exactly.
And from when you look back at it, you go from the realization of, oh, these parents, are abusive. They don't really allow any freedoms or anything, to, wait, these parents are overprotective because of what happened with their last child.
Mm-hmm.
And so that whole story with the pumpkins and the blight gives you the insight of, they did that, they did this with the first child, so that way the second child hopefully,
Mm-hmm.
would have a chance of a normal lifestyle. So that's why they are a little bit more, overprotective and almost like insanely overprotective, I should
Yeah,
say.
especially because like the mom, she's so like stressed out and like everything's
Yeah,
fine, type like acting and stuff. So you think she's like just crazy, and
yeah,
it's like, oh, that actually makes sense for her to be kind of unhinged because of her worriedness and trauma that she's experienced with her family. Um, but yeah, so definitely it's one of those things to like after you watch it, it's like, oh, those things that we just picked up on and whatnot. So there is like a good story there. It's just really unfortunate that the ending was just like boop and it's done. It's like
yeah.
okay, like what are we doing? So that's where I really feel like that was like a budget thing.
Or it
But
could have been like the whole idea of they didn't know how to like properly, finish the story of this child that was like, you know, strong and stuff. They can't really kill her off because, she's too strong for them or powerful yet. They need to figure out a way to put her in a cage
yeah.
and let, Peter survive.
Mm-hmm.
It was almost like a happy ending for the sake of a happy ending, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, yeah,
But then
for
they add,
sure.
and then they try to add like a little bit of the foreboding monologue at the end to kind of like keep the happy ending as something that's like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
we don't know if he's going to be fine because she's going to get out and go after him.
Yeah. And then you also have the line of her being like, you're my brother, you're just like me. You're a murderer too. You killed mom and dad. So it's like,
Yeah.
oh shit.
Yeah.
But yeah, so definitely a lot of good elements, but then just like some pretty deep roller coaster moments of it, like,
Yeah.
because like just Brian's character was just very bad writing in my opinion.
Yeah.
Even though it was like he was a good little segue to have the teenagers show up and get slaughtered,
Yeah.
but like just like actual writing wise, not good. And then the ending just not being very good. And even though like I don't need things to be explained to me, I just kind of wish there was a little bit more there as far as like why was she a monster? Like why was she born like all messed up and stuff? Like it's kind of weird because obviously she's supernatural.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
yeah. So I don't know, but do you have any last thoughts on
Well, you have to
Cobweb?
give your rating. What would you give it out of a 10 or a 5?
Do you know? I don't. What
I
would I give
would
it?
probably give this somewhere between 5 or 6 spiders out of 10. Just because there's some really, really cool parts,
Yeah.
but then it's not anything special, yet it has cool things that you're like, this is what we need horror to move towards, this
Hmm.
kind of like new, you know, take a chance on trying something different and move into this direction where, we have a little bit more freedom, but yet it needs a little bit more of the old stuff that we like, but yeah,
Hmm.
it's just like in that weird,
The thing that's
weird,
funny is like so the movie
yeah,
has this vibe of being like an early 2000s horror movie, but then also on top of that has the vibe of a lot of the early 2000s horror movies, specifically adapting Japanese horror films like The Ring,
yeah,
Dark Water, and like, these different Japanese horror films, The Grudge with like the hair and stuff like that.
yeah,
And like and then it just has the vibe of like
an American horror.
of the American version, which like I
Yeah.
feel like a lot of people kind of hate on that, which is understandable. It's so weird. You can't really explain it. There's just this
Yeah.
something about that time frame of these particular bunch of movies that were Japanese horror films, and then they just kept remaking them in America, and they all had a very similar feel to them, even though they weren't necessarily the same people that were adapting them, but they just had this weird feel to them.
Yeah.
And it feels like one of those movies, even though it's not.
Yeah.
Which is just
It's
funny.
just like, it's just one of those films that there's like a lot of good, but there's a lot of stuff holding it back from being one of those films that's like I would recommend to a lot of people.
Yeah. Like, I think I almost feel like if this was a Japanese horror film, that film would be really good.
Yeah.
Like it's
I feel
like this feels like the bad adaptation of the really good one.
I 100% agree. I feel like this was the American film that held back on doing what the Japanese film went balls to the walls on,
Mm-hmm, exactly.
And we've seen that with The Ring. We've seen, well, Ring to a lesser extent, but we saw that with Dark Water, One Missed Call. What else? Ju-on or The Grudge. We saw where the Japanese, they go 100% in, and then the American version's like, oh, we got to scale it back a little bit for the mass appeal.
Yep, exactly. But I will give it 6 out of 10. 6.
Yeah.
6 of Brian's bent to the side, messed up legs out of 10. But maybe more like a 5, maybe 5.5 or something. I feel like
it's somewhere in that range. I agree.
Yeah,
100%.
I feel like the IMDb rating on it is actually very accurate, which is like a 5.3 or something. So
yeah,
I try to stay away from the 0.3, 0.5 rate because that just gets so complicated. So what's always easier for me is trying to take it down to like a scale of 1 to 5, which is essentially kind of the same deal. So like a 2.5 or 2, like something like that. But yeah, so I think that concludes it for us. Am I right?
I think so. So what's left to say?
Like, subscribe, comment, unsubscribe, dislike, comment that you hate us,
and tell us how much you love this movie and say that we're dumb idiots for not liking it.
Yes.
Or you can agree with us and explain why you didn't like the movie, or you can explain to us why you loved it and why we're not seeing the movie as it should be.
Yeah, is there unknown Japanese film that is literally the same thing but darker?
Yeah. Because you never know, that could be coming to a rip to shreds soon.
Oh yeah, 100%. Alrighty. Well, thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time. Okay, bye.
Bye.